happens. It's loading. I am live. Okay, we are live. So, hello everyone. This is Anders Mickelson, and I'm here with Ben Wanger, and we are excited to talk because he is a cybersecurity lawyer. And as you guys might know, I worked in IT infrastructure, and that included some cybersecurity, and that was enough to make me realize that I did not want that to be my career. It was didn't sound like the type of responsibility I wanted to have, but he takes on that kind of responsibility, and he's had some amazing experience with a lot of people. But I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us more about your background. And I think it's a really cool specialization and something people would really benefit from.
Thanks, Anders. I'm really happy to be here and talking to you. So again, my name is Ben Wanger. I'm a cybersecurity attorney at Baker Hostetler. We are a nationwide firm. We have over 1,000 lawyers, and we probably have the largest data practice of any firm in the country. So my specialty is cybersecurity law. Probably about 65 to 70% of my practice is I work with entities that have had cybersecurity incidents and guide them through that, meaning kind of whether that's kind of working on negotiating the ransoms, assessing their legal obligations, making sure that helping them comply with those obligations, kind of everything. Basically, I hold their hand and walk them through that process. Then the other 30% of my work is kind of proactive, where I work with clients proactively to prepare for these incidents, kind of make sure that they have the right policies and procedures in place if and when these incidents occur. I think now, as we sit here in almost 2026, the truth of the matter is that kind of cybersecurity threats are part of doing business for any entity.
Yeah.
And you can have the best security imaginable, and that's great. But the truth is there's nothing you can do to totally kind of immunize yourself from cybersecurity, from the possibility of cybersecurity threats. I mean, you could have the best cybersecurity, but then kind of a threat actor gets in through a vendor, and all of a sudden kind of there you are. So kind of to that end, it is equally important to make sure that you are practicing that kind of incident response process and that you're prepared for it if and when it occurs. So that's
that makes sense. I remember somebody had an insightful comment about how you could just kind of think, well, maybe things won't work properly. So what do we do then when things go wrong? I think that's a lot of what you focus on, is helping people be prepared for when things go wrong, and as well as helping them respond. Am I right on that?
Exactly.
So a lot of my clients who I work with are probably, over 100 employees, like a few thousand employees. That's kind of the space I'm most familiar with. But I think there's going to be a lot of people on here who serve larger and smaller clients. And I'd love to hear, what do you think is some of the most important things people need to know for 2026, especially with everything which is going on with AI and the different ways the threats are evolving over time. And we hear about different things in the news.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of things that you can do from a cybersecurity standpoint. I mean, we talked about AI. I know one of the things that a lot of clients are worried about are kind of like AI spoofing, kind of social engineering with AI. Social engineering is and has been an issue for a long time.
Yeah.
And the best way to kind of, and you think about what is the point of social engineering? Generally, these threat actors are trying to either get into your network, or they're trying to figure out a way that they can monetize it, that they can kind of get in the middle of some transaction and cause funds to be redirected. So, I mean, one of the most important things for social engineering and AI is employee training and making sure that you are educating your workforce, especially those who have kind of the ability to direct funds, about kind of proper hygiene and steps that you can take, whether it be kind of verifying that payments are going to the right places, but education is very important. Also, kind of talking about cyber threats, kind of the largest kind of vector that we're seeing for cyber criminals, especially for ransomware, to get into the network, are kind of unpatched vulnerabilities.
Really?
So kind of making sure that you have a robust patch management kind of plan where you are applying patches as soon as you can. I mean, that is vital in kind of protecting yourself against cyber threats. And then just practice, being prepared for how you're going to react if and when one of these incidents occurs, I think is probably one of the most important things that companies can do.
So speaking about patches, for example, what are some of the things which need to be patched? I mean, obviously we'd like everything to be patched, but what is it people's laptops which are being compromised? Is it the server side architecture, or are there other things like where the
VPN is
patches?
probably the most common kind of
Pardon?
patches, like the VPN,
Oh,
like
I'll look that
that.
up.
I mean, kind of whenever you're seeing like VPN patches released, kind of applying them. I mean, that is one of the major vectors that threat actors are using. Is they're kind of exploiting vulnerabilities on companies' VPNs to gain access. So again,
Wow,
making sure that kind of that you're not kind of making it easier for them to get in, I think is essential.
interesting. Does that seem to be a concern with more laptops connecting to company VPNs, or does it also or do these issues also extend to things like SD-WAN and stuff like that? And
Yeah, I think it kind of runs the gamut.
yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't want to get too technically in the weeds. So I was curious, just your thoughts. Like, what's the first thing like you tell a CIO or a council to do, like right after they discover a breach? What do you think they
So
should do?
So the first thing they want to do is you want to kind of do triage and make sure that you're kind of minimizing the damage,
Okay,
whether that be kind of taking systems offline. You don't want to kind of work through it. You want to kind of shut down once you see a breach. Like if you see a kind of encryption or a threat actor in your network, you have to kind of first of all you have to kind of own the fact that this process takes time then to kind of to come back from.
okay,
So the worst thing they can do is either like wipe and just start over. Um, you first of all you want to take the systems offline. You want to reach out to getting experts engaged. Me kind of as legal, we often serve as the quarterback where we're kind of leading the process. We also want to get forensics involved because it is essential that we figure out how the threat actor got into the network. Because again,
right.
if we don't, then we might restore the systems, but 3 weeks later, we're in the exact same boat.
Yeah, they'll
Um,
just get back in again. Yeah,
so we want to get the systems offline, kind of triage, make sure that we're kind of containing the incident, then start kind of getting experts engaged to figure out exactly what the scope is, whether data was taken, and then start kind of building a plan for minimizing business disruption. What we're doing all these in parallel. It's not like
right.
1, 2, 3, but again, I think it's important for companies to understand that when one of these incidents occurs, this is not going to be something where kind of 48 hours later we're back to normal. This is a
Right.
process that takes time to investigate and kind of the full scope of the incident.
Okay. So the breaches you've seen, do you have any thoughts on examples of where things went sideways in a response and things could have been presented with the right process in place? Maybe
Yeah.
aren't aware of that.
So I think when I see things going sideways in the cybersecurity incident response process, it's usually one of two things. First of all, it all comes down to kind of people and communications, where
Right.
I think sometimes where there's not a clear kind of incident response plan in place, people don't know who is making what decisions. That's where I see a lot of problems is
Sure.
because again, one of the real kind of benefits of an incident response plan is it really dictates kind of who makes what decision. Because there are a lot of decisions that need to be made during a cybersecurity incident, and those are not IT decisions. Decisions like, are we going to pay a ransom? What are we going to tell our customers or employees? What are we going to? Yeah, I mean, how are we going to what are we going to tell a business partner kind of about their data? These are really
Right.
high level decisions, and I think it's very important to kind of spell out in advance how they're made, who's making them, who needs to be consulted. And the other area where I see kind of things go sideways is in messaging. Your messaging
Mm-hmm.
has to be tight. Um, you think back to it, you don't want to say one thing one day and then like you don't want to say, yeah, we had an incident, but we're sure that nobody's data was taken. And then 3 days later, you're telling them, actually, we have 5,000 people's social security numbers were taken. Because all of a sudden you do that and you look like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing I say kind of at least once a day to clients is I would always rather be a week late with my communication, but make sure that I'm 100% sure that I'm accurate, than speak quickly and risk kind of having to walk something back and looking foolish.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say people should know about handling ransom. Well, I have two questions. One is like handling a ransomware case. Like, what's kind of the immediate next steps after the note hits? And then I had another one, which is about whether or not paying the ransom creates legal risk.
So again, I think the process I talked about is what you do once you get this ransom note. First,
I feel like you kind of answered the first one.
You want to triage it. One thing that I tell clients is if a company gets this note, they should not be reaching out to the threat actor. Okay. We would do that. I mean, I would say in the matters that I handle, we almost always do it, but we do it through a third party. Third parties that are experienced in reaching out to these threat actors.
Okay, that makes
almost 100% of the ransomware matters I handle, I recommend that we communicate and quote unquote negotiate. That doesn't always mean we pay.
Yeah.
But it means that we are
in communication somehow.
Communicating with the threat actor.
But third party, that's good. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think that's something people not be obvious to people. They might think, hey, maybe I should handle this myself, rather than, hey, maybe I can easily pick up the phone and find somebody who has a lot of experience. Like any other ransom negotiation.
Yeah. But it's specialized, and I would highly discourage kind of somebody who doesn't have experience doing it from doing it themselves.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. As someone who has to deal with a lot of technical stuff, I always say that too. Like, hey, why don't we bring in an expert? I can understand what they're talking about, hopefully. But I'd like to get. I should be doing this. Let's see. So I think you answered this question already, but it was you're talking about like social.
I was gonna say, I didn't address your question about the liability from paying a ransom.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I would like to understand that. Yeah. Okay.
So I guess is your
well, I think one of the big things is to avoid the creation of legal risk. What I got out of it was, hey, you really should have somebody who's really experienced in dealing with these matters, so they can, help advise you on the legal risks as well as how to communicate with them. But that said, let's say, I don't know, what are the risks of paying if that's where the negotiation seems to make a reasonable price point?
To start with, there's two reasons to ever pay a ransom. The first is you need a decryptor to unlock your systems, and that's more efficient than just rebuilding.
Yeah.
And the second is that the threat actor's taken data from you, and they're threatening to publish it online, and you determine that it is worth it to pay them to not do that. Yeah. Now, whenever we pay a ransom, one of the things that we do, and we do it through a third party, and we make sure that the threat actor that we're paying is not on any sanctions list by OFAC. Because it's a crime to pay an entity on a sanctions list,
right?
And it's a strict liability crime, meaning so the fact that you didn't know that they were on the sanctions list is not a defense.
Yeah.
But so we want to make sure that we do due diligence to make sure that they're not on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, once we do that, paying a ransom does not really create more exposure from a legal perspective. Whether it reduces exposure, probably minimally so.
Yeah.
It's really a question of whether you need the decryptor or you are kind of looking to prevent your data from being posted online.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I think it's so important for people to have systems which they know are working, where, these things can be brought up and restored properly if something goes horribly wrong, like in this example. And then I think we were talking about, phishing and social engineering is important. And then on the network side, I think you were saying that attackers are getting in through VPNs and also through like just problems with patching in general. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of how attackers are getting in from a sort of a network side or sort of a technical side rather than a social engineering side?
Yeah, I mean, they're always looking for different ways, whether it's buying credentials on the dark web. I mean, these threat actors are always finding ways, and they're looking for systems, again, that don't have monitoring on them.
Okay, there we go. So I think that's an important thing. Yeah, lack of monitoring. And then, so this is something I don't know much about. What kind of legal exposure do companies have in terms of not keeping their patches up to date, or not keeping track of vulnerabilities, or not monitoring systems? I mean, what does that create for them besides looking stupid?
I mean, I guess the exposure, first of all, is if they have an incident, then there's litigation risk. So kind of when you're not keeping your patches up to date, you're making it easier for there to be an incident, which can result in litigation risk. And there's regulatory risk. I mean, if regulators see that a company is not taking what they deem to be reasonable steps to protect the data they have, there's the risk of fines there.
I think that would be would you say that's important then, right? If it doesn't look like you're actually at least trying to do a good job, right? That probably affects the legal and regulatory process, right?
I think if you're not taking at least reasonable precautions to protect the data that is in your possession, you're really playing with fire from a risk standpoint.
Interesting. And how would someone know if there's sort of, I guess because there's so many different things you can work on every day, how would people know if they're kind of doing enough to stay on top of this stuff?
I mean, probably the best way is having kind of an annual kind of risk assessment done, bringing in a third parties,
right?
Look at kind of your security infrastructure and kind of because again, you're 100% right. Is how do you know if you're doing well enough? Is I think you have to have a third party come in and look and see if from a risk standpoint you're acting reasonably and kind of where your risk lies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm a believer in independent experts, but I guess that's because I am one. And then so so this kind of ties into something I've been hearing lately, which is that if companies don't know about what legacy telecom or connectivity services are even active in their environment, that seems risky to me. And I've noticed that a lot of times companies, they have the stuff they manage, but then they're not even aware of all the stuff they're buying every month, and if those things are still plugged in. And I feel like I've heard stories about that sort of old circuit which is still plugged into some important widget in the production line, and things go horribly wrong. But so what are your thoughts on that? Do companies need to have a firm handle on everything they're buying and everything that needs to be protected?
That's a fantastic point. I mean, and that's another thing we see a lot, where it's like these legacy machines that don't have kind of up-to-date monitoring on them because they can't even support it, them being the vectors of entry. So yeah, I think that is a fantastic point of kind of monitoring those and kind of taking them offline if they're leading to exposure. I mean, threat actors love those legacy machines because they're an easy way in, frankly.
Okay, legacy is easy way. Yeah, that makes sense.
I see you have a question now about AI policies. Yeah, I mean that is something that we do regularly. I mean, given that kind of how the proliferation of AI, I see that John Joseph asked this question.
Yes.
We are regularly working with companies to prepare AI policies because, again, kind of AI is one of those things that if you don't have a policy around it, kind of you are just playing with fire again, because, again, there's so many things that it can and be and is used for that I think it is vital that companies know what their employees are doing with AI. They know kind of what they deem to be an acceptable use of AI, what they deem to be unacceptable, and they're putting that out there. Because again, I think AI is just going to become more and more prevalent. And again, as great as it is, we need to make sure that kind of we're not kind of taking on exposure by letting it go unchecked.
And I mean, what are some of the big risks you see? I mean, I'm hearing on the one hand, people are talking about people just, I don't know, putting data into the AIs, and then it ends up who knows where. And then the other one I'm hearing about is I don't know, maybe also talk about, like, I think it's CCPA in California, where using AI to make decisions and things like that is also under scrutiny. What are your thoughts?
I mean, a big issue is kind of, especially if you're using an AI that's like not captive, meaning it's like connected to the internet. I mean, if you're putting kind of personal information or sensitive information in there, once you do that, you've lost that. Like, that information is out there. So you have to be very careful of what you're putting in, because otherwise you could be disclosing information that you didn't mean to be disclosing. And you have to make sure, and kind of more and more, we're seeing different states enacting laws around AI. So again, you want to make sure that you're being compliant with those state laws. Right. And that's one of the things that we do regularly, is we're working with clients to make sure that kind of the AI is a tool for them and not a vehicle for kind of liability. Because I mean, AI is great if used right, but we need to make sure that we're using it right and not kind of using it in a way that could backfire.
And I guess maybe this ties into the whole thing about training. I mean, it's just maybe just the lack of an AI training policy. Is that probably a huge red flag that you better do something about that in 2026?
Yeah. I mean, I think training, but just initially is having that policy, making sure that you,
that's
as,
what I meant.
as an organization, kind of have a grasp of where you believe you deem it acceptable to use AI and where you deem it not being acceptable. And at the same time, making sure that you're protecting the information you have. Because again, sometimes, I mean, if you're putting that information out there, you could lose control of that, and that information could end up anywhere.
Yeah, seems like it. I mean, I've heard stories about that. It's kind of surprising, but it's also a bit obvious. Anything you post on the internet tends to live forever. See, so I noticed we don't have a lot of time left. Let's see. I think we've talked about a lot of these points. Anyway, okay, here's one. This is okay. This is a good one. Since we only have a few minutes left. Oh, Don T. Joseph says something. There may be doing without knowledge of repercussions, which is the reason AI training is much relevant.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, online security training. So I think that's a good point. Let's have some sort of policy and then follow it up by training. So that's probably a good red flag for everyone. Like start working on those, create something, and then you can get outside experts to help you. So what's the biggest cybersecurity legal blind spot that no one's talking about that you really want people to know about for 2026?
It's a great question. I'm not sure what I would say is the biggest. I think a lot of things I talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, the thing that I think is most important that people don't think about is preparing for the incident response process. I think they spend a lot of time securing making sure that they have security in place, making sure that they're doing things to protect the system, but not enough time preparing for what they're going to do and how they're going to operate if and when they have an incident. To that end, we do these tabletop exercises with clients a lot, where we'll kind of literally walk through an incident from kind of the beginning to end, and we'll talk about, well, like, what would you do here? Like, what would your process be? Like, we say to clients, so you've just been encrypted. Like, who's in the first meeting? Kind of how are decisions getting made? And I think practicing that process is something that a lot of companies are doing, but I think a lot of them aren't. And that to me is something that is so beneficial as you prepare for kind of this business reality right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me think too about like teams and team sports, because when they're doing that at a high level, right? There's plays which they're not going to do necessarily all that time, but they still have to practice them. They still get ready for those unusual situations, and training's a just as important part of a team doing well as doing the actual work and being out on the field. So yeah, makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Well, I know you have to hop off. Are there any last things you'd like to talk about before we?
No, I think this was great. I'd love to do this again. I mean,
me too.
And I'm more than happy to help. I mean, anytime anybody has any cybersecurity issues, I'm always happy to be a resource. And I'd love to do this again with you.
Well, this is fantastic. So everyone, please reach out to Ben Wenger, and also please reach out to me. As Ben said, it's important to monitor everything. And in my opinion, if you don't know what you're buying from your vendors, especially telecom services, you can't possibly be monitoring it all. And we find stuff all the time that companies have no idea they're paying for. Sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, locked in some old data center or some old locations. And we'd love to help you guys. So please reach out to both of us. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.